Alright, it's the Gremlin with the Gremlin Gamer, and today we are going over the skills of Zero the Assassin. This is actually the first guy I played as because in Borderlands 1 I really liked Mordecai, and so the idea of playing a sniper again was appealing, and also initially it looked like he was going to be this sword-wielding ninja type. And I actually focused more on a melee build my initial playthrough, and kind of found out the hard way that it's not the best way to play Zero. That said, he is a still top tier character. It's just that he does require a bit more skill to be really truly good with him, to really get the most out of his playstyle. It's all about precision and timing. But if you nail it, he just does. He's basically your main guy as far as doing single enemy damage. Not the greatest dealing with mobs so much, although he does have the ability, but he's more focused on the guy that takes out bosses. He's more about focused on doing really high damage to a single enemy in most cases. So let's get right to his action skill. So his action skill is Deception. Pressing L1 to create a holographic decoy and vanish for a few seconds. The longer you are invisible, the more damage your next attack deals, but any invisibility sooner results in a shorter deception cooldown. So you actually can use this quite a bit. As far as action skills go, aside from maybe Maya, Zero has the shortest cooldown on his action skill, which is really cool, allowing him to use this quite a bit. And as it mentions, if you end it early, you get that back. So I was kind of wrong. Axton is not the only one who can kind of shut his down early to save some cooldown. I'll be honest, I have not played with Zero in a while, so I'm kind of refreshing myself as I go through this. So as we see, the cooldown is 15 seconds, increases your melee damage up to 650%, gun damage up to 200%, and critical hit damage by up to 250. So usually it's one of these things where you want to attack the enemy in however form and fashion right before deception ends to get the maximum damage bonus. That's really the key to making the most of his action skill. The thing also to keep in mind is yes, you do become invisible, but you're not invulnerable. So if you're in the line of fire, you can still get shot and knocked down. And the other thing I don't like, unfortunately, about Zero is that they should have made it so that he could do something similar to Axton's longbow tech as far as where you can create the decoy. Because it usually creates the decoy more or less just a few feet from where you're standing, and the enemies are still shooting in your general direction. So you have to usually run away from your own decoy. It's not the biggest problem in the world, but it would have been nice if you could have a little more control on where you can actually set up your decoy. They kind of fixed this when they added the decoy for Zaid in Borderlands 3, where he can actually place his decoy wherever he wants within reason. Anyways, getting back to our character here. So once again, each tree has a specific focus. Zero's is actually pretty straightforward. Sniping is obviously focused on sniping, although this skill tree does give you a lot of perks towards just being good with guns in general. But it does tend to focus more on sniping, critical hits, pistols, and that kind of thing. Cunning is more about just improving and adding some features to his action skill. It's more about modifying his play, how he plays, basically focusing more, I guess, his ninja abilities to a point. And then Bloodshed is basically the melee focus tree. And in principle, a lot of these skills sound great. And like I said, I really ran with this on my first playthrough. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who has found a way to make this viable, but I just never could really get it to work the way I wanted to. Which is a shame because everybody wants to be running up with a sword and taking people out and coming invisible out of nowhere and with a backstab. So anyways, let's get to these skills real quick. So in the first tree, and this is usually the one I start with, we have Headshot, increased critical hit damage. Nice, right across the top, bonus to your crit damage, can't go wrong. Optics increases your zoom with all gun types. Additionally, your aim is not disrupted as much when taking damage. So you'll notice that if you're getting shot at, you're not going to shake or rattle or lose focus as easy. And you'll get better zoom on just about any weapon you're using. Next, we have Precision. Improves your accuracy with all gun types. Once again, especially with the focus on being a sniper, this is a really useful skill, totally worth investing in. Killer, kill skill, killing an enemy increases critical hit damage and reload speed for a few seconds. So if you're really skilled and you're able to get headshot after headshot after headshot with, say, the Maggie or whatever you're using, you'll be a machine, just really nailing it. And it's just crazy because it's snowball effect. Sorry, I'm stumbling here. Next, we have one shot, one kill. The first shot fired from a fully loaded magazine deals increased damage. Gun damage increased by 120%. Of course, this is a little high because I do have the class mod bumping it, but this can be really fun to use with the Infinity pistol because basically every shot with the Infinity is the first shot. So having this skill maxed out and putting an Infinity pistol is more of a novelty gun on most characters. Not useless. It's a decent gun, but on Zero it is absolutely ridiculous. It is beast. It is absolute beast. It's almost something you always want to keep on hand with him. Elemental damage type, it doesn't matter. It's a fun thing to put on Zero just because of this skill. Next, did we go to this one? Yeah. So next we have Velocity, increases bullet speed, gun damage, and critical hit damage with all gun types. So once again, another boost to your crit damage, increase the bullet speed, and another bump to just gun damage. It's just a good, you can't go wrong with it. Bore. Now this is the centerpiece. This is what makes Zero the ultimate in one-hit damage. Bore is kind of a crazy skill that can be cheesed on certain bosses, but even against crowds, I guess this is probably the skill he has best as far as crowd control goes, to a point. So how Bore works, your shots pierce through enemies. If your shot hits an enemy after piercing an enemy, it deals massively increased damage. Bore does not work with rockets and some specialized projectiles. Additionally, while Deception is active, your visor will highlight enemy crit locations. Each additional target hit takes 100% more damage. Enemy crit spots highlighted while Deceptive is active. So what people figured out though is sometimes this can get exaggerated if it goes through multiple enemies or through a certain hitbox on a boss. A classic one is people one-shotting the bunker because of the way the hitbox is set up on him. If you hit it just the right way with Bore, it will just completely a one-shot. His life bar will just totally drain in a single shot. So this is a must-have skill, and for a single point, it's a steal. Alright, so next, we're moving on to the final end of this tree. We have confirmed kill, or kill confirmed. Aiming down sights with your gun grants you increased critical hit damage. The longer aim down the sights, the greater the bonus. Critical hit damage up to 80%. And you'll see like a little symbol down on your skill bar line on the heads-up display showing you when it's kind of maxed out, similar to how the interspersed outburst skill works on Gauge. And especially if you're playing Sniper, this is just free bonus crit damage that just already is insane anyways. Next, we have at one with a gun. Greatly improves your accuracy with sniper rifles when shooting from the hip. Additionally, increased reload speed, magazine size with sniper rifles. Absolute great skill to have. Typically, snipers are not very good at from hip shots. So it's a nice thing to have so that you're not having to quickly change to a shotgun or a pistol to fend off an enemy that suddenly runs up on you while you're using your sniper. Also, the increase in reload speed and magazine size are great too, because typically you're probably going to be using a Jacobs, which some of the really heavy hitters don't have particularly deep mags or high reload speeds, so it really helps with those big. I forget which fix it has, but they have just ridiculous outright damage, so they only hold 5 or 6 rounds and reload stupid slow. And lastly, the capstone, which is also a really good one. Critical Ascension. Scoring a critical hit with your sniper rifle increases your gun damage and critical hit damage with sniper rifles. This effect can stack up to 999 times. Stack slowly decay if you haven't scored a critical hit in a while. This one you have to kind of watch. It actually does deplete relatively slow, but it's a situation where if you're in a firefight, you want to keep hitting criticals every chance you get, and this thing will just climb and climb and climb. Um, it's just kind of wild how far you can build this up. Next, we get into Cunning. So first off, we're going into Fast Hands, increased reload speed, and weapon swap. You got to put points into this tree. This is just a pretty good, outright bonus to your weapon swap and reload. It can be really handy, like I said, if you're in a situation where you're trying to get rid of the sniper to switch to a shotty or whatever. Next, we have Counter Strike. After getting hit, your next melee attack has a chance to deal massive increased damage. This is pretty good for the simple fact that in most cases, if a psycho does run up on you and get up in your face and hit you, you can hit them right back and usually one-shot them. Or a skag or anything else that likes to get right up on you and attack you. This is actually a surprisingly good skill to use. It was also probably intended, or I know for a fact, to pair with some of the skills in this tree to just give you a good bump on your melee damage. So yeah, you really need to put the skills in anyways to get further into the tree, and this is really a nice one to have. Next is Ambush. Increases damage dealt when attacking from behind or when attacking an enemy who is targeting someone other than you. Not a horrible skill. A lot more useful if you are playing with other players, so there's less chance that they are, more enemies are focused on your teammates than you, so it does help, but probably not the best skill to spec into. Next is Fearless. While your shield is depleted, you gain a bonus to gun damage and fire rate. Not a horrible skill, but not great. Because typically you want your shields up, especially with Zero, because he is kind of vulnerable to a point in regards to his action skill. Like I said, it will make you invisible, but it doesn't necessarily make you invulnerable. And as you may have seen so far, we haven't really found any skills that heal him. So yeah, trying to avoid damage is important with Zero. He's very risk versus reward in that regard. He's kind of a glass cannon of sorts. Next, we have Rising Shot. Each successful ranged or melee attack grants a stacking damage bonus for a short time. This bonus can stack up to 5 times. Faster weapons can gain stacks more quickly, but slower weapons retain stacks for longer periods of time. So right out the gate, you get an increased 50% damage to your guns and 45% to your melee damage. Once again, I use it. It's just free, increase to your damage. I mean, when you're in the middle of a fight, you're gonna rack up attacks. Yeah, you don't even actually have to get kills. Just hitting an enemy with a bullet or hitting them with a melee attack is gonna get this going. So yeah, it's just free damage, just simply for fighting. Next, we have Death Mark. Now, this is a nice one. Melee attacks mark the target for death for a short duration. Marked targets take additional damage from all sources. Also, it's not an easy thing to live with. So, marked targets take an additional 80% damage from all sources. Lasts for 8 seconds. And this is really cool for a single point, and you also don't actually have to be in deception for this to work either. You simply just punch or hit something that's attacked you, and now they're going to take damage from your shotgun or whatever you decide to shoot them with. Not to mention, this also still works in conjunction with Counter Strike. Um, let's see. Then we have Unforeseen. Your holographic decoy explodes when you become visible again, dealing shock damage to nearby enemies. Once again, super useful. The decoy definitely does its job. Enemies will run up on it and attack it. And unlike the turret or death trap, it's a hologram. It does not have any health. It only disappears when you end deception, whether it times out or you end it early. Otherwise, they can attack it all they want, they can't destroy it. And so when it does time out, boof, you get a nice electric explosion. Enemy shields are down, and they're tenderized and softened up and ready for to be finished off. Next is Innervate. While Deception is active, you gain increased gun damage and movement speed, as well as regenerate health. Now, this is kind of weird. Gun damage is 10, regenerates 4% of health per second, and your movement speed is 35. The gun damage is not bad, but more or less irrelevant. The main reason you really want this skill is to help with survivability. So what this allows you to do is, as I mentioned, just because you go invisible and you pop out a decoy doesn't mean you're still not in the line of fire. This allows you to immediately heal and continue to heal while you're in deception, as well as greatly increase your movement speed so that you can get the hell out of the line of fire, behind cover, or wherever it is you're trying to get. It's a shame that this skill is so far up the tree because it is the only heal skill that, as far as I'm aware of, it's the only healing skill that Zero has. And it's, once again, pretty conditional to him being able to use his action skill. That said, he does have a relatively short cooldown. He can get to it, but yeah, this is a real must-have skill because it's his only real survivability skill. I take that back. I'm probably going to make an ass of myself, but I know that it's kind of tough to get him to heal. But let me see. Next, Two Fang. Every time you fire a gun, you have a chance to fire twice. I never really made use of this skill. I know a lot of people like it. Flak in Borderlands 3 has a similar skill, and I won't deny it. On Flak it works pretty well, so it probably works good on Zero as well. It's just not a skill I ever felt much investing in, but since I'm probably going to take him to level 80, I may invest in this. Lastly, we have Death Blossom, and this works in conjunction with Death Mark. Action skill augment, press L1 while in deception to throw a handful of kunai. Each kunai will explode with a random elemental type. Kunai do not benefit from the deception damage bonus, but throwing kunai does not end deception and can apply Death Mark. You may throw kunai 5 times per cooldown. So basically what this does is that when you go into deception, you can throw these knives at the enemy. It doesn't break deception, and although they don't get the bonus, they will do elemental damage, random as it may be, and it applies Death Mark to them. All bonuses, all great things, and then when you wait till the end of the deception to make the kill, you get the maximum damage output for it. So once again, now you see why Zero is all about being the big hitter, taking out, the bosses, taking out the badasses. Next, we have the Bloodshed Tree. So straight up here, we're getting just an increase to melee damage. Massively increases melee damage against enemies with low health. So this was kind of double-edged. It made it to where you could try and finish him off with a sword. So you could say shoot him with a shotgun, then hit him with a sword. Take advantage of the fact that they're low health. Not a bad skill, but as I mentioned, building for melee power in this was a little tough. Next, we have Iron Hand, increases your melee damage and maximum health. Decent on both, not a bad thing to pick up. Be Like Water, shooting the enemy increases the damage of your next melee attack. Melee attacks increase the damage of your next shot. I think I used this one. Whether it really made that big of a difference is hard to say. Grim, kill skill. Killing an enemy causes your shields to quickly regenerate, increase your action skill cooldown rate for a few seconds. This was very useful. When I was playing the melee build, I definitely spec'd into this one. Very useful skill. Could be even useful in a build with these other ones, like I said, going past level 72 here, we may consider that. Next is Follow Through, kill skill. Killing the enemy increases your movement speed, melee damage, and gun damage for a few seconds. Like I said, I was kind of on the fence about kill skills. I didn't really think they were that great, but I'm kind of an idiot when it comes to that. I honestly can't say if this was good, but looking at it now, it probably was. Because once again, you're usually killing stuff pretty commonly, pretty rapidly. Just getting those bumps to speed and damage output are probably not bad. Next is execute. This was basically a single point that changes your melee a little bit. While deception is active and the target is under your crosshairs, press R3 to dash forward a short distance and perform a special melee strike, dealing massive damage. I used it. Honestly, can't say how good it was, but it worked for the most part. Next, backstab. Your melee attacks deal additional damage when striking an enemy in the back. So this was actually kind of my focus on this particular build, is going into deception and trying to stab enemies in the back with my sword, literally. Two mixed results, and it was definitely a challenging way to play the game. But not one that I will say is not, hey, to each their own. I actually beat it playing it that way, so. Next is Resurgence. Killing an enemy with a melee attack restores health. The lower your health, the more health you receive. So, once again, we do have some other ways to increase your, to heal. Killing an enemy restores health, the lower your health. Yeah, but once again, as you'll see, it's a good ways down the tree before you actually get to that. So playing Zero can be kind of tough when it comes to survivability, no matter how you're specking him out. Next is like the wind. While moving, you deal increased melee damage and gun damage. So this was kind of cool. Mose has a similar skill in Borderlands 3 where when she's moving, as long as she's moving, she does increased damage, which is always useful. And to be honest, if you're playing a gun like that, you really should be moving the whole time to avoid being hit. Next, we have Many Must Fall. Killing an enemy with a melee attack while deception is active causes you to deploy another holographic decoy, re-stealth, and adds time to the deception's duration. This can be done multiple times in succession. This skill sounds so awesome, but unfortunately it just doesn't really work very well. Because as I was mentioning, it's really hard to make a really powerful melee build on Zero. And that said, it's really hard to get consistent kills using just melee attacks on enemies. For the most part, unless you're hitting a grunt, you're not likely gonna, certain badass and super badass enemies, you're not gonna kill them with a single swat, maybe even not even 3 or 4. And if you don't get the kill, and you hit them again, it knocks you out of deception. And then you lose the chain. So as long as you can keep hitting weak enemies, you can keep the chain going. But that's the problem, is that you don't get all weak enemies. Most enemies come out in a mix of grunts and badasses and super badasses and so on forth, depending on the location and where you're at. So once again, it's just kind of a mixed skill. It sounds awesome. It would be awesome if it really worked the way it's supposed to, but because of the inconsistency in enemy weaknesses, it just doesn't really pan out. So, going over that, this is the equipment I'm actually running, a Skull Smasher Tum Tum with the 180 critical hit damage, an unending infinity, and I've actually got several different infinities. I can change up to the flavor I need. Once again, rocking a Ravager. I don't have a Juicy. Actually rocking a, well, for whatever reason, I don't have a Juicy for him. I could probably clone one off another character, but I'm rocking this one instead with the bonus melee damage. Once again, Norfleet, Antagonist Shield, Magic Missile. We're going for Bones of the Ancients for cooldown and shock damage. And I'm rocking a legendary Sniper class mod. And so that is it for Zero, the final character on the breakdown. So the next couple of videos will be going over the concepts behind class mods, basically how they work and what they actually are, and also kind of going over relics, the different types of relics, where to get them, how to get them, and the ones that are worth keeping and the ones that are worth ignoring. because you've only got so much space, and you'll still probably have to make meals. All right, see you next time.